Hey guys,
Hey guys.
this is Mark,
Yep, and this is Michelle.
and today we're going to talk about fat. It's
Yeah.
a very unpopular topic.
Yes, it
because
is.
Fat is actually addictive because the body needs adrenaline to process it, according to medical media.
To process fat, right?
And so it is very hard to let go of that adrenaline high. So when you eat, after you eat some fat, you feel good. It's because of the adrenaline. So Mark had extra fat yesterday, and he's struggled with brain function today.
Yeah, brain fog. Yep, and I have a tiny bit left. Hey, Krista. But it's cleared up for the most part.
So did you want to talk about your experience with the fat?
Well, this is the first time eating fat has actually caused brain fog for me that I remember. So we do these veggie wraps where I don't actually saute the mushrooms. I just cook those. I steam them until they're dry, and then season them with a little bit of garlic powder and what's the other thing? Oregano and sea salt. And then I put those on this coconut cassava tortilla and a little bit of cashew cheese. Then we I take onions and peppers that I've sliced it with a food processor. Those are seasoned with salt and oregano. And then I put those on top of the mushrooms and the cashew cheese, and then some black olives and tomatoes for her. Roll that up, cut it in half. And
we buy pre-made wraps that are gluten-free.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are really good. And so I decided, we had fries yesterday from a vegan restaurant, and we had quite a few, and I didn't feel bad after having them. So I thought, well, okay, maybe I can have a few more. So when I came home, I took some potatoes and browned those in coconut oil. And so I had those with my wrap, but really woke up, well, even through the live last night, I was having issues with the fat. And I felt like I was going in slow motion, and everybody else was going in slow motion. And then today, while my body had processed through a good bit of the fat, I still had brain fog this morning when I woke up. Well, and by brain fog, I mean you don't perceive things correctly, and it's almost like you're in slow motion. You feel like you're in slow motion. So we were driving somewhere today, and folks were taking what felt like forever to get through a light that we were waiting on. And I said, well, man, those folks are taking their sweet time getting through that light. And Michelle goes, remember, you still have some of that brain fog and you're perceiving everything in slow motion. And so I thought, yeah, that's true. So by this evening, most of it was gone, but I still had to take the antiviral stuff that medical media recommends that we normally take, like the lysine and the colloidal silver and the liquid zinc. And let's see, what else did I take? Oh, raw garlic. I took about 5 cloves of that. And that really improved it a lot, but I had drank lemon water all day too. So it didn't get rid of everything. I still have a tiny bit left, but it's much better than it was, and my mood is much better than it was.
So medical medium says if you eat too much fat, it makes your blood have less oxygen, which then turn allows the viruses to expand themselves.
Well, the having less oxygen, that's actually science, because the oxygen is necessary to oxidize the fat and break it down. Well, if that's the case, it doesn't go to the red blood cells where it can be carried up to your brain and to other parts of your body. It gets diverted into the fat. And so that makes sense.
So I want you guys to know that if your person has PANDAS, too much fat can make PANDAS symptoms appear. Because
you're basically feeding viruses and bacteria. and less oxygen that there is in the blood and in the liver, and this kind of stuff goes to destroy viruses and that type of thing. So, the liver uses enzymes, but
Well, he also said that the liver needs oxygen to work.
Okay.
So it's not working.
Mm-hmm. It's not working properly.
Well,
if all that oxygen is bound up with fat. So.
And it had to move into bile production mode when you eat fat. So you're not. He it's called my liver. It's not taking care of all of the bad things that are in you. It suddenly has to. It's not detoxing anymore. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
It's moved into bile production.
It's diverted from detoxing to digesting fat.
Right. So you're really hurting yourself if you don't stop the fat as much as possible.
And as well as I am, even that amount of fat was too much for me.
It seemed like a lot of fat that you had yesterday.
So if I have trouble with that, imagine those of you who are still really sick, what that fat's doing to you.
Now we know it's not easy to quit fat. See, he's crossing his arms because he doesn't like talking about fat because it's hard to give it up.
It is.
But what are some ways you've used?
The coconut date rolls that we have at work. So I don't have fat at work. I just had fat here at home because it didn't bother me yesterday. And so I just thought I could get away with a little bit more. So in this case, I was wrong. So
eating a lot of dates is a really good substitute for meat. It also keeps adrenaline from coming out. That's what they're for. They're adrenal. Potatoes.
Right, sweet potatoes and russet potato.
All potatoes, they're make you feel full. So they're a good filler food. But they're also really good for you because they have lysine and glucose and all kinds of things in them. This is a product that we found that you can make lots of delicious meals with, and it won't feed strep. And this is how, you want to talk about this?
All right. Well, Michelle came up with this idea. This is a squeezed bottle of water when she was making chickpea pancakes and chickpea flour pancakes because we didn't want to use oil for those. So she perfected a way of putting just enough water in the bottom of a saute pan, of a skillet, and then pouring in the batter for the chickpea flour, and then letting that chickpea flour pancake cook. And as it cooked, it got a little bit brown. Then she'd add a little bit more water around the edges, and that would keep it from burning, but it would also keep it from cooking too quickly. So it would take a little bit of time to brown. So she could actually brown the chickpea pancakes using the water. And so now we use it. I put it in the bottom of pans for hash browns for her or potatoes for me.
Mushrooms.
Right, mushrooms, whatever else, because that can replace oil. You're not going to get a lot of browning out of it because it's water, but you can heat up your things like potatoes. I'll cube up some potatoes, some boiled potatoes that I have, throw those in a pan with water, and then I make a jalapeno hot sauce. Now, here's another way to cook without oil. Most hot sauces are made with oil. Most nut sauces are made with oil. Now, nuts have fat already, but you could do you could make a nut sauce like a walnut sauce with water instead of oil. But I take the fresh jalapenos, I cut them up, I take off the stems, cut them up, put them in a blender, and put in a few cloves of garlic, about 5, 6, 7 cloves, a tablespoon of cumin, some sea salt, about a teaspoon or so of sea salt, and then about 1/3 of the jalapenos of water, and I blend those up. That way I don't have to use the oil. And it's a really good hot sauce. It works really, really well. So I put that on potatoes or sometimes with pasta, put those on the wraps, that kind of thing.
Would you talk about making pesto? Particularly cilantro pesto.
You can make cilantro pesto out of water. That's not a problem. In fact, if you have a very high-speed blender, like a Vitamix or a Ninja, or we had an Oster before we had our Ninja, you could put the cilantro in there whole. You want to rinse it off first, unless it's organic. But then you could put the whole bunch in there and add about half with water or about a third of water. And then you could throw some garlic cloves in there and some sea salt and blend that all up. And you'd have a cilantro pesto you could put on your potatoes or on pasta or eat with veggies or, that raw veggies, that kind of thing.
And sometimes when I make a baked potato, I use this on it. And sometimes I put honey on it. I've put avocado on it before. But when you talk about fat, you can't just think meat, fish, dairy. You have to think about like nuts. How many nuts are you eating in a day? How many avocados are you eating? How many olives? So he says ideally 15% only plant fat would be
of your caloric intake per day.
Would be the optimum.
Right, only 15%. But then you have to spend the time counting up your caloric intake, your calorie intake for the day, and then take 15% of that and know that you can only get that many calories from fat.
And so he also says if you have some kind of meat, you're getting into a little bit more dangerous area for liver function. So it's not easy to give up fat. We know that. But my healing took off when I did a whole month fat-free. Once you get going into a week, you're like, oh, okay, I can do this. And everything starts tasting better because you're tasting the food instead of the fat. But then you go back and it's hard to get off again. But I only have a little bit of cashew cheese every once in a while. I might have some olives. I think if you have the whole food rather than oils, he calls oils radical fats. They're not from the whole food. So,
well, I don't know if he's using the term radical to mean this or not, but the longer an oil stays separated from its source, the more air gets to it and the oil oxidizes, and over a long period of time or shorter period of time, it turns rancid. Well, the reason it turns rancid is because oxygen molecules are binding with the oil molecules and breaking it down and causing it to go stale. And I think most people know what stale oil smells like, rancid oil. It's not very nice. And so radical oils to me, which is why I don't normally eat them, would be things like what I used to cook with last night, the olive oil or the coconut oil. It's separated from the coconut. If it was oil that came directly from a coconut I had cracked, that'd be one thing. But oils that have been separated from like olives or sesame seeds or walnuts or coconuts, they cause inflammation and brain fog and numerous other things.
So the ultimate healing is to have the least amount of fat possible. And the more plant-based you are, the more healing you'll experience. That's the story.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No.
No. Okay.
Do you want to add anything?
No, don't have anything to add, really. That is the story and experiment on fat. So
we'll definitely be recommending our autistic people to eliminate as much fat as possible because
well, and that can be a problem when you're on the GAPS diet.
That's right. We were going to talk about the GAPS diet.
Because when you have so many animal fats and so many oils separated from their origins, from their plants, and animal fats can go rancid faster than plant fats, plant oils. But oil like that just constantly keeps you inflamed and constantly keeps you in a brain fog and constantly keeps your perception warped if your liver can't handle it. And so evidently mine still can't handle that much fat. So for me, I'm going to stay away from it. But when you're on a high fat diet like that, you have to keep an eye on inflammation, because inflammation is a serious culprit for the autistic brain.
And if your child has autism, then we already know the liver's backed up. That's just that's what the problem is the backed up liver with all the viruses, the metals, and the liver can't process it, so it gets out and into other systems, and that's why the brain shuts down. So losing that fat, you're going to get well faster.
Yep. Because your liver doesn't have to process it, and it can process the toxins instead.
Lots of apples and spinach.
Right. So anyway, all right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. We will see you tomorrow night, guys. Continue to do the celery juice, the heavy metal detox smoothie, and the lemon water, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 10:45.
Download my book at www.healyourautism.com. Called Buried Alive: One Man's Journey Out of Autism.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.